Hello, it's Scott Manley here with part 59 of Interstellar Quest, and we have a solar panel package back orbiting the moon, at least for a little while. This thing has been ejected after an impact experiment and is heading off into a higher orbit at a higher velocity than the original spacecraft, clearly propelled by the power of the explosion upon impact. But even though we had that, we had an actual impact event, which of course means that our roving science lab, the Outland, can in fact collect impact data. And what it tells us is that Surveyor 1 impacted into the moon, producing seismic waves, which tells us all sorts of awesome stuff, which I didn't even bother to read. However, the question is, can we get more science from this solar panel as it returns to the moon? Otherwise, it's not that interesting to us. It's just going to slam into the surface and be destroyed. But maybe we will get more data from it. And no, it's going to bounce. That is not what I expected to have happen. Oh, that's nice. It completely bounced over that ridge into this crater. Well, surely the next impact will spell doom for this plucky little piece of a spacecraft. One which has hit harder, travelled further, and I don't know, this is one of the oldest spacecraft in this series, actually. I should probably check I don't have, cheats turned on. Nope, part damage and everything is all there. This is entirely managing this under its own power. Can it survive another impact? And come on, give me the science, give me the science, give me the science, and bounce. Great. I think Kerbal scientists should dedicate themselves to finding what this photovoltaic panel is made of, because, to be honest, it's pretty important. Maybe it has been hardened, maybe it has been annealed by its exposure to waste heat. Perhaps that has altered the crystalline structure in those solar cells and turned them into some sort of supercrystal that can survive high-velocity impacts. Maybe using this, we can construct some high-quality materials, high-tech materials that will maybe, come on, one more impact, and no. Okay, yeah, that really is just going downhill. Things literally are going downhill from here, huh? Who'd have thought it? Well, I guess we can maybe have a mission to go and retrieve this from the surface at some future juncture. But until we can secure access to this magnificent piece of structural engineering, let's return to the Outland, which is spending its first night on the moon. Now, because it's solar powered and electrical powered, for the first, few hours, it's getting power from the microwave network, but then after a while, it just starts to burn through its electric charge and life support. I didn't really think too much about dealing with the night, and as it turns out, I pretty much run out of power about 1 hour before dawn. Thankfully, life support will enable us to survive those small moments without heating. I should probably go out and figure out how much battery power it takes to survive a night on various planets. Anyway, folding everything up, we're ready to go for another flight towards the canyon. Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of people saying, why are you taking so long to unlock interstellar technology? We really want to see you flying to the other stars that aren't actually in the game. Now, I get a lot of people saying, oh, you're taking too long to do this. And the truth is, yes, I'm taking a long time to do this because I'm actually quite enjoying faffing around, creating silly things, building space planes. I actually really enjoy making space planes because they're actually really hard. Rockets are easy. Space planes, they will flip out and kill me at the moment's notice. They will break up when I turn too hard, especially now that Ferrum has fixed that. So, I figured out that I could pretty much unlock the entire tech tree in 2 missions. That would make for a very boring series. So this is why I've been mucking around and doing various things. This episode actually has a lot of me just flying from biome to biome in this Outland spacecraft. In a way, it's dedicated to everyone that keeps asking me to get on with it and unlock interstellar travel. This is what you would have to watch. I think you might change your mind after this. But yeah, getting down into the canyon, I have to be a little careful because the landscape is not totally flat. So you see me kind of dancing around on this on this flame that is made of burning aluminium. Crazy stuff. Metal fires are awesome. I don't know if you have ever seen a thermite in action, but thermite is more or less made of aluminium and iron oxide, and what happens is you mix the two powders together, right? And the aluminium takes the oxygen from the iron oxide and releases energy, and because they're all in contact, it happens really quickly, and you end up with metal slag. So metal, chemistry, awesome energies. You begin to indicate concerns regarding whether or not the landing was simply an elaborate hoax, but the communications are interrupted by a strange voice telling you to be quiet. No, these missions are all for real. If there are shenanigans involved, it's probably something to do with the disappearance of Lambert Kerman and whatever Sean Kerman found on the moon. Perhaps we should take this spacecraft and investigate where he landed and where he had to be rescued from. Maybe that will provide us some clues as to what's really going on. But regardless of our future plans, for now, Sidney Kerman is continuing with his task of, planting flags wherever he can and coming up with interesting messages. Yes, Sidney Kerman, he got an A+ in flag planting at Kerbal Flight School. He's also not a bad pilot after all as well. Samples in this location are striated. It's possible that the surface is fractured here. There are visible striations in the walls of the canyon. I see, formed by some sort of geological process that creates striations. What could that be, I wonder? Sidney Kerman may have got an A in planting flags, but he only got a C in picking captions. This is the Munar Canyons, and you know what? For Sidney, it's just like Beggar's Canyon back home. There are actually canyons on Kerbal. Unfortunately, they tend to be full of water, so it's not really like Beggar's Canyon, which is on a desert planet. Anyway, enough of this temporary Munar stuff. Let's go and follow up on one of the old spacecraft. Yes, this is the Moho Return spacecraft coming back to Kerbal. It's coming in at about 5.5 kilometers per second, and it's about 20 minutes out from Periaps. By the time it arrives, it'll probably be going 6 kilometers per second. I'm just going to try and adjust the Periaps height to bring its Periaps down to about 19 kilometers. And then, once we get in really close, we will jettison this engine stage. And now it'll be time to be setting some re-entry speed records. Look, 599, it'll reach 6 kilometers per second. 6 kilometers per second, and we're still 370 kilometers up. This will be probably pulling about 30 to 40 Gs when it's actually flying through the atmosphere. And that's one of the reasons why you have to modify the deadly re-entry multiplier. There's the multiplier which would destroy this spacecraft simply because it was decelerating too high, which means it would be impossible to build something such as the Galileo atmosphere probe, which actually decelerated. It's over 100 Gs. It lost half of its heat shield mass, and half of the spacecraft mass was in that heat shield. The Galileo re-entry probe is probably the fastest atmospheric, human atmospheric thingy ever, I guess. But we are just more or less going to be flying through the atmosphere on this 2-meter heat shield that will hopefully protect the rest of the spacecraft. That antenna there is not being correctly dealt with. It's not going to rip off because remote tech is not enabled still. It's still not working correctly. But other than that, 100 kilometers, 6.2 kilometers per second. We'll get up to 6.25 just before we hit the atmosphere. And 6.25. This is really setting some speed records for atmospheric interfaces. I've no idea if this is going to work. The re-entry corridor for this thing is actually really narrow. I experimented on this on other saves, and it pretty much needs to be between 18 and 20 kilometers. If it's too high, it will more or less fly out of the atmosphere and back into deep space. And escape velocity. If it's too low, then it will burn up. And oh, there's bits of the spacecraft exploding in front of it. Sign how dangerous the atmosphere is. And there's the real deceleration kicking in here. We're 25 kilometers up, and that plasma is more or less thousands of degrees centigrade, and we're finally slowing down to at a manageable 10 Gs. That would have probably killed astronauts, but for the instrumentation, it's fine. Now, it looks like we're narrowly going to avoid a water landing. If I'd been slightly, I don't know, to the south maybe, if I'd been in that lake, it would have been a water landing. And water landings, as you know, are not necessarily the safest things in Kerbal's space program. Well, we are almost subsonic. Let's deploy the parachutes to start slowing us down for real. And we can probably ditch the heat shield once we get a little slower. Down to 4 times acceleration. There's a heat shield hanging on the front for dear life. We're like, go away, heat shield. And I'm like, I don't want to go away. I want to be with you. You have the parachute. Please don't let me fall to my death here. No, don't open. Ah, bang. Yes, okay. So that was life and death of a heat shield. You know, it was very nice the way it sacrificed itself in the face of re-entry heating. But, yeah, we really didn't need that extra weight for landing. But a successful touchdown after 122 days in space. We flew around the sun, we flew past Moho, and we landed in this little region of the world right there. How nice is that? Well, we can recover the vessel, collect the data, and, well, it's quite a lot. We have over 1,094 science just earned for flying by Moho. We should probably send a manned mission there soon. But anyway, back to getting on with things. We're going to be heading to the polar crater to collect more sweet science so that we can perhaps get the secrets of warp drive a little sooner. We're collecting some data in flight as well. There are a few instruments which will return biome-related data as we're skimming across the atmosphere. And I make a quick trim to my trajectory just to make sure I skip over these ridges before actually entering the crater. There's plenty of spare fuel, let's see. I mean, the entire surface we're flying over is something that we can convert to fuel, which is kind of convenient. Kind of like flying over Titan, except even on Titan you'd probably need to bring your own oxidizer. Here we can just split the things up and bingo, we've got ourselves some awesome rocket fuel. Even better, I wouldn't doubt if it produced nanocrystals in its exhaust. Kind of Munar fairy dust, so to speak. It's true, it's like Peter Pan, fairy dust is what you need to fly, and good thoughts. Sidney Kerman, think good thoughts. Think of Beggar's Canyon back home and how you like to fly along it in your jet. I know this doesn't fly like a jet, but we trust you on that. Now, it's worth noting that because we're so far north and our antenna is only pointing vertically, we're only getting about 16.7 megawatts here, but even although we're getting less than the 40 megawatts the process requires, we're still generating enough aluminium and oxidizer that we can actually refuel our rocket. So we don't need 100% power to make this thing happen. But of course we are collecting all sorts of fascinating science, and all of these messages are fascinating and witty and entertaining, and you don't really want to hear me reading them all. Hey, it looks like a really big rock on EVA. Wow, I've never heard that before. Let's get this flag planted. Sidney Kerman, do you have a caption for us? What inspirational words are you going to leave for the world here? How about we start by calling it the polar crater? That seems like a good plan. And perhaps, maybe we could remark on the scientific nature of the landscape. Perhaps the fact that the crater walls are shading the interior and therefore making ice available, so that we can then take that and make ice cream or other stuff. Seriously though, I don't think the crater's actually far enough now north to be permanently filled with ice. To your surprise, you find a large lump of ice lodged in the centre of the crater. Upon further analysis, you find that it doesn't taste particularly well and is too chunky for a snow cone machine. Yes, well, so much for the great polar ice caps. Feeling slightly bored, you play peekaboo with Kerbal. Anyway, Well, at this point, we've unlocked a fair amount of new science, a large chunk of science, enough to unlock fusion power. Now, you'll notice that this is the 0.23 version of the science tree. 0.235, I have now seen where this goes, and, well, most of these things have been moved. The deuterium tritium inertial confinement engine has been moved out further. It has been taken away from me before I can even use it. However, I now have two larger fusion engines that I can actually, or fusion reactors, that I'll be able to use. But the best bit is, by unlocking that node, I get access to the thermal turbojet's ability to switch from atmospheric fuel to internal fuel, which means I can build even more better space planes. Anyway, back to this thing once again. Who needs to see space planes? We have more science to spam all over the surface. And this is the best way to play the game, right? We need to get more and science, more science. We're going to go right to the very pole here. Right up to the north, where things start to look really wrinkly up here. I have no idea if I can land this thing up this way, but I'm going to certainly try. But in the meantime, of course, I'm going to cruise, which means flying suborbital, and collecting more science. Just remember, we've transmitted about 2,000 units of science back from this thing, maybe 3,000. But when we actually return the crew, we will be able to take even more. Of course, we have to put a spacecraft into orbit and meet them, but we'll deal with that. And since we're hurtling across the surface of the moon, coming on a suborbital trajectory that will surely smash us into the surface, it seems like a perfect time to go EVA and grab science from the instrumentation. As we come up here, it becomes very clear that landing at the pole of the moon may not be the easiest thing I've done in this. So, as we've seen, it's not necessarily the most rigid object. It is kind of top heavy, so I have to be very careful to find a location to land in. Also, because we're near the pole, the sun by definition is going to have low incidence angle, so we have to find a spot. So a lot of the smooth spots, right, with low slopes are actually in the bottom of little valleys, which I can't actually see. So I move the spacecraft over this way, where it starts to look, perhaps over this way, it looks flat enough that I can risk landing. And it's really hard to tell. It'd be nice to have some sort of tool that actually would tell, as I keep coming down and saying, nope, that's definitely not a good place to land. How about over here? Well, let's try that. Moving the camera around, just try to get an idea of what it looks like from various angles. But, well, I get there, I land safely, and now we're only generating 4 megawatts of power. And unfortunately, even under time acceleration, we are not generating any aluminium or oxygen, right? We're mining the alumina, but with only 4 megawatts of power, we are unable to split this into the fuel we need. This could be the end of the line. But hey, it's a rather pretty location to be. If we just could get over that ridge, we could see the planet Kerbal, right? Well, it's not much of a flight to go over there if the worst comes to the worst. Anyway, Sidzi Kerman once again demonstrates his flag planting skills and tries to improve on his plaque writing skills. Last stop, says the rhetorical question. Oh yes, here we do not have enough power to electrolyze the rocks into the fuel which we need. So we are concerned. We definitely have enough power to keep them alive. Probably don't have enough delta V to get into orbit. Whatever shall we do? Well, Sidzi Kerman at least can admire the view for a little while. But actually, I have a cunning plan. You see, we're kind of pointing this way. The antenna points straight up. If I make the whole thing rock over, I might be able to pick up one of those relays which is pointed towards the sun, right? So all we need to do is raise our supply of power high enough that we get enough. And that is not enough. I'm trying to rock the spacecraft, but I don't have enough torque here. So if we raise these legs, now we can turn the spacecraft over ever so gently. We don't want to break things. And look at that theoretical supply. 50, 60, 80. We have plenty of power to electrolyze those rocks, and the Outland will live to fly again. But to be quite honest, I don't think we need to see any more of the Outland flying around boring biomes. We've seen enough of that. We have many new things coming. The next episode will be starting on the .235 release. Until then, I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.
A lot of civilian spacecraft.
The
good news is that it means we have fewer civilian spacecraft to protect.
Wait, no!
Oh my goodness. Okay, where are they? Oh yes, bandits start throwing out missiles.
The graphics
everywhere. Bandits and
here
raiders
are on very
unsurprisingly,
high,
there should be the
1020,
skies are full of bandits.